Rayman 2: The Great Escape is the sequel to Ubisoft's brilliant Rayman. Like the previous Rayman title, Rayman 2 is developed and published by Ubisoft. It was originally released on Nintendo 64 and PC in 1999. This is a bit odd because the Nintendo 64 is one of the only consoles at the time that didn't get the original Rayman, which leaves this decision to be a little questionable. In 2000 it was released on the Dreamcast, and then later that same year released on the PlayStation, which is the version I'll be using for this review. Unlike the previous Rayman game, there are much more noticeable version differences in Rayman 2, each having their own pros and cons. The Nintendo 64 and PC versions were the standard version. The Nintendo 64 had slightly worse music due to it being on a cartridge rather than a CD. The Dreamcast version had the best graphics. The PlayStation version had the worst graphics, but features a full cast of voice actors speaking actual languages, rather than a bunch of gibberish nonsense known as Raymanian. Seen in other versions? Yeah, because apparently he has a language named after himself. Did he invent it or something? I don't know.
My friend!
It also features a number of level differences. So I started off my review of Rayman, which if you haven't already, please check that out. But yeah, I started my review of Rayman by talking about how awesome the character of Rayman is. Well, in this game he remains rather unchanged, although he has a much more serious look to him now rather than the happy, jolly one we saw in the first Rayman. This time, he means business. Also, he no longer charges his fists, but instead shoots these glowing balls of light out from his hands. Doesn't make sense to me. And what the hell's that victory dance? That's not as good as his old one. Well, it's still pretty cool, I guess. So obviously the biggest change from Rayman to Rayman 2 is the switch from 2D to 3D, which I have to say is a pretty ballsy move on their part after just one game to try and switch it up entirely. But they did an excellent job. The controls are solid and Rayman handles very smoothly. The platforming in this game is very easy thanks to Rayman's great jumping abilities. He can also use his helicopter hair that has been brought back from the original game, although this time it's available from the start. The combat is simple also. You can lock onto enemies and you'll find yourself mostly strafing from side to side and jumping to avoid their attacks, while also waiting for the opportune moment to strike. It's pretty fun. So like the first game, this has a similar hub world known as the Hall of Doors, which is your gateway into the game's many levels. You'll quickly come to discover that the game has absolutely excellent level design. There's a huge variety in the levels. As you progress through the game, you'll constantly find yourself doing something new. Not at one point does this game get boring or does the standard drop. The greatness carries on right the way through from start to finish. And you know what? After 12 years, no. After about 20 times of playing through this game, there are still moments that really impress me and make me say, wow. That's a testament that shows just how well this game has stood the test of time. As well as the main levels, you also get these little side levels which are like time trials. They're good fun too. Like the first game, there are cages hidden in all the levels for you to seek out. However, these aren't just collectibles, as with each cage you break you get a little increase to your max health, which is a nice help. There are also 800 yellow lumps hidden throughout the entire game, and it's a lot of fun going back through each nook and cranny trying to track down every last one. You'll want to be collecting them as you go, as they're what opens the doors in the Hall of Doors.
Door. We'll only let you through if you bring us 150.
Also, like the first game, you're occasionally rewarded with new power-ups. Although you don't get that many, and to be honest, they don't do a great deal in changing up the gameplay. But swinging on purple lumps is always fun. What this game doesn't have that the first one did is the level of difficulty. Rayman 2 is a total walk in the park compared to the first Rayman, and there really aren't many parts in the game that could present you with too much trouble. In this game you don't have lives or continues. Every time you fall down a hole you lose a little bit of health and then respawn back at the last green lum you received, which is this game's checkpoints. And green lums are pretty frequent. You only die if all your health runs out, and even then, red lums, which give you health, are also frequent. So for better or for worse, this game is easy. You have to decide for yourself if that's a positive or a negative, but I've never minded the difficulty. It doesn't take away from the game's fun factor at all.
Only your strength and bravery can convince me.
The boss fights in this game, although infrequent, are a whole lot of fun. Especially the final boss, which is very different in the PlayStation version compared to other versions, but I actually prefer it a lot. They also did a really great job with the music in this game. It features a wide number of tracks, some played frequently, some played not so frequently, but all are top notch and help create atmosphere for the levels. So remember how I praised the first Rayman for its light-hearted nature? Well, this game is the complete opposite. It's a very dark game. Firstly, the story is much deeper than the first game and a lot more effort has been put into it. The game starts off on a rather depressing note. Almost all the characters in the world have been kidnapped by Admiral Razorbeard and his band of robot pirates, and it's up to Rayman to save everyone. The story is expanded throughout the game in some really well put together cutscenes, and with the inclusion of things like the character Polycus, who can only speak in dreams, the Four Masks, the Guardians, and other things, the story becomes much deeper and much more involved. Platformers don't have to work on storylines, but this game has pulled it off very nicely. There are also a ton of awesome characters that you meet along the way. Although the voice acting isn't amazing by any means, I think it really helps give a bit more life and personality to these characters, and is a very nice touch to the PlayStation version. As well as the story, some of the levels can be very dark as well, particularly the Cave of Bad Dreams and the Sanctuary of Rock and Lava. I first played this game when I was very young, and I remember being terrified of these levels as a kid, and for a good reason. These levels still creep me out, and the music too. So creepy. To be honest, with Rayman 2, it seems that the developers wanted to create something as different as possible to the first Rayman, and they succeeded. Apart from very few nods to the first game, this game shares little resemblance. In fact, they probably could have replaced Rayman with a brand new character, and no one would be any the wiser. Not that different means bad, of course, it's just different. But I digress. The game does have its light, humorous moments, sometimes created by the not-so-hot voice acting. So in that sense, the game is similar to, say, Resident Evil? Ha 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 ha, hilarious. So to sum up, Rayman 2 The Great Escape is one of the funnest, most satisfying platformers to date. I'm not kidding when I say I've played this game from start to finish at least 20 times. It's just something that keeps me going back to it time and time again. I did say that Rayman was one of my favourite 2D platformers of all time. Well, Rayman 2 The Great Escape is one of my favourite games of all time, without question. I just love it. In my opinion, it's a very valid compare with the greats of the time like Super Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot. If you consider yourself a gamer and you haven't played Rayman 2, I cannot recommend it enough. Please do. For nostalgia purposes, the PlayStation version is probably my favourite as it was what I had growing up, and it's the one I've played the most. I hear the Dreamcast version is pretty good though, and I have played every version except for the Dreamcast. A remake was also made for the PlayStation 2 known as Rayman Revolution, which combines everything good from the PlayStation and Dreamcast version and includes its own little extras. It was also released on the Nintendo DS under the title Rayman DS, which is a port of the Nintendo 64 version, and re-released on the Nintendo 3DS under the title Rayman 3D, and was a port of the Dreamcast version. The PlayStation version was also released on the PlayStation Network store. So let me try and make a simple breakdown of it. The Nintendo 64 version and PC version are the originals and are the same. The Dreamcast version is Nintendo 64 version plus better graphics. The PlayStation version is the Nintendo 64 without voice acting. The PlayStation 2 is a combination of the PlayStation and Dreamcast versions. The DS is the same as the Nintendo 64, and the 3DS is the same as the Dreamcast. Simple enough, right? But whichever version you choose, you're getting a phenomenal game. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned and subscribe for more Rayman reviews and other videos coming very soon. Woogly, 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 woogly.